right, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the Minnesota State Veterans Cemetery. I'm the cemetery administrator, Eric Sagi, and I will be serving as your MC for today's dedication. Before we start, I know I addressed this a few minutes ago with some of you. We understand there's very limited seating. We're not really set up for an event like this, so we apologize for that. I can assure you it'll be a pretty brief ceremony, so you won't have to stand here all day. I did want to acknowledge a few people in our audience today. We have David Swantek, the Senior Administrator of Memorial Affairs, Doug Thompson, the Curator of the Minnesota Military Museum. He's the gentleman that arranged to have the reenactors here today. We also have the members of the Veterans Art Committee here. We'll talk about them briefly a little bit later. Then also on the military side, we have Brigadier General Cruz, Colonel Roy Edwards, and I understand, sir, you've come all the way from North Carolina, so I'd like to give just a brief bio for those that aren't familiar with you here. Colonel Edwards served in the Marines from 1961 until 1989, including two 13-month tours in Vietnam. He flew 295 missions and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. He's flown many different types of aircraft, but primarily the Marine A-4 Skyhawk. Colonel Edwards is married to Arlene Edwards, has a son and a daughter living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and son who is a major in the Marines stationed at 29 Palms, California. Colonel Edwards and Arlene reside in Raleigh, North Carolina. So again, thank you, sir, for being here. We also have from Camp Ripley, Lieutenant Colonel Chad Sackett. I apologize, sir, I won't do a long drawn-out bio on you. We also have Major Holly Zabinski, who will be calling up here in a few moments, and also Sergeants Quentin Sam and Sergeant Corey Ingen, also retired Marine Corps. Behind me, you'll see the Marine Corps detachment of Valhalla from the Marine Corps League. I'd like to thank all of them for being here, and thank you to the many veterans and family members that are here as well. To begin, those of you who are familiar with the cemetery know we're not part of Camp Ripley. However, we're very fortunate to be in close proximity and have received a lot of support over the years from Camp Ripley. So I'd like to ask Brigadier General Cruz to come up and say a few words at this moment.
So good afternoon. Thank you everyone for coming. This is a very momentous event for us. As I sit and look, I'm just awed at how beautiful Charles's painting is, and to meet some of the subjects in it that'll be memorialized in here forever. That's a pretty cool statement. So Colonel, thank you for your service. Major, well done. And on behalf of Camp Ripley, the director is right. We're one family here. There isn't anybody that drives by these historic walls that doesn't think this cemetery is part of Camp Ripley. And that's how I approach it. I am very proud to be a neighbor. I'm very proud to give every ounce of support we can to this beautiful cemetery and the people that are residing in it. And so I really appreciate each and every one of you coming, spending part of your Memorial Day here to help us thank Charles for his hard work and learn a little bit more about his piece of art. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, General Cruz. The dedication of the Marine Corps painting marks an important milestone for the Veterans Historical Art Monument as a whole. But more importantly, it provides a fitting tribute to the men and women who have served, are currently serving, and will serve in the United States Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is a storied branch that has impacted virtually every major conflict since their incorporation. So I don't have to tell many of you in this room, the Marine Corps is a very proud group. I cannot count the amount of times I've heard a Marine correct a visitor when referred to as an ex-Marine. That mentality is a testament to the history and accomplishments of the Marine Corps. Once a Marine, always a Marine is more than a motto. It's an acknowledgement that whether a Marine served in Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, the Chosin Reservoir, Vietnam, or Afghanistan, there will always be a special bond between them that transcends time. The amazing artwork you see behind me pays tribute to the sacrifices made by these brave men and women. Every Marine in the painting, every battle depicted, every minute detail tells a different story. Stories that these beautiful paintings can help pass on to our future generations. We are fortunate to have many veterans in our presence that have contributed to the extensive history of the Marine Corps and continue shaping that history today. One of those Marines is Major Holly Zabinski, who can be seen in the bottom right of the painting here. Major Zabinski was commissioned at the University of Minnesota in 2007. Upon the completion of flight school, she was stationed in Okinawa, Japan for 3 years. During this time, Major Zabinski served as a CH-46 Sea Knight helicopter pilot and conducted exercises in Thailand, the Philippines, Bali, the Republic of Korea, and Japan. After receiving her master's in operations research from the Naval Postgraduate School, Major Zabinski performed analysis for the Headquarters Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia, and correct me if I'm wrong, ma'am, Task Force 515, all right, in Bahrain. Major Zabinski is currently training to fly the MV-22 Osprey helicopter, which you can also see in the painting in the top right corner. Major Zabinski is a recipient of the Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, and the Humanitarian Service Medal. It is now my honor to welcome to the podium Major Holly Zabinski.
For coming out today. It's an honor to stand among all these Marines up that you see behind me. As you can see, Mr. Kapsner is a very talented artist, but I had the privilege of taking him through the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, Virginia. I've been through that museum easily a dozen times, but taking him through it was probably the most educational experience I had. Every time we turned around, he had something to point out, and it just shows you how much time and effort he put into this painting to make sure every detail was exactly how it should be. I want to thank my family for coming, my mom and dad, my sister and my niece, and then also my soon-to-be in-laws. We only have about 3 weeks left until it's official. And honored to be next to Colonel Edwards. So I'm going to make a very bold statement and say the most rewarding job on this planet is to lead Marines. And that's like when you see a 18 or 19-year-old Marine take nothing and do something with it to make mission, it's just phenomenal. And so see where I'm going with this. Promise I've only been up for since about 2 a.m., but it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life to get to lead Marines. And unfortunately, when they go above and beyond, and sometimes not every Marine comes home, which I think is the heart of this project, is to remember those service members who are no longer here with us. And so I really appreciate everything that has been done as far as going into this painting. As I said, once a Marine, always a Marine. So it means a lot that there is something here that when families bring their military member to their final resting place, they can see exactly what went into one of the probably most memorable times of their life. So I want to thank everyone for coming here today. I want to thank those who have served, those who are serving, those who support all that serve, and Semper Fidelis.
I understand that Major Zabinski also traveled all the way from North Carolina today. As we acknowledged before, due to the plane, she might have been a hair late, but we very much appreciate you being here, ma'am. Yeah, for those of you familiar with the overall project, you probably remember Gordon Gerling, who can be seen in the Army painting on the far left there. When Gordon Gerling first imagined this art project, it was obviously an ambitious thought. Not only would there need to be individuals willing to get the project off the ground, but also willing to dedicate many years of service to seeing it completed. Those individuals became the Veterans Art Committee. A lot of those are here today. So I encourage you, if you see them, to thank them as well, because they put a lot of time and effort into this project. Members of the committee that are present here today, thank you for your commitment, dedication, and hard work over the years. There's also one other minor piece to this puzzle, and that would be an artist. So, all the hours spent planning, fundraising, and promoting this important monument would not matter. There's not an artist that was capable and willing to create these masterpieces that you see in the committal hall. Mr. Gerling had seen the work of artist Charles Kapsner and had no doubt in his mind that Charles was the perfect choice for this. Although Charles' resume and qualifications spoke for themselves, one look at his previous work would quickly erase any questions that anybody might have. Now I know that Charles does not appreciate me standing up here and rambling about him, and my art resume and qualifications do not speak for themselves. So I will conclude my remarks. Please welcome a tremendous artist and a tremendous human being, Mr. Charles Kapsner.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here on a lovely, albeit warm day. I believe we're probably going to break some records to celebrate the official installation of the Marine Corps painting. The Marine Corps' contributions are honored and remembered here today and take into account 243 years of dedicated service in keeping our nation safe. I look around and see veterans and active duty personnel from all branches and note especially the proud ranks of the Marine Corps and thank them for all their tremendous contributions. I take special note to honor the memory of those veterans who, while not physically with us, remain very much in spirit with us in this hallowed space. As each painting gets done, it's important to note that real people model for these, including veterans, active duty personnel, and even a dog. And here today you can meet and converse with them and find out the behind the scenes of modeling, but I'm sorry Benny won't be here. That's Benny behind me up there. At this time, in addition to those who have served as models for the Marine Corps, I'd like anyone who has modeled for any of the other paintings to please join me up front so others here today will know who you are. So if you can sneak around anyone, and as I'm doing that also, where's Doug Thompson? Doug, do you want to just take a second to explain the uniforms over here, because that's also part of our history?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's a little warm today, but let's all give a special thought for our Civil War Marine Corps reenactor wearing an all-wool uniform. And I guess my point is, don't complain about how hot it is, because I'm sure Michael's roasting over here. The Marines have always had exceptional uniforms, and Michael, could you step forward for a minute, please? Michael is modeling a Civil War era Marine sergeant's dress wool blue uniform. Even back in the Civil War, the Marines looked sharp. And Michael is a dedicated historian and reenactor from the Minneapolis, Twin Cities area, and he traveled up here today to model this uncomfortable looking uniform for you. So thank you, Michael. Our next gentleman is Randy Bigler. He was a Marine Air Wing in the 1970s, and he's modeling, come on out here, Randy. He's modeling the World War II Marine Corps reversible camouflage uniform. The Marines were the first U.S. unit to actually use camouflage uniforms as a combat uniform, and he's got the green side out and dressed as a typical Marine would have been looking during World War II. Randy, you got any comments on the uniform?
It's nice and comfortable in this weather.
It's not wool, right?
Yeah, it's not wool though.
And Randy also is a volunteer for the Commemorative Air Force. He helps keep those old warbirds flying. Yes. And again, another dedicated historian, and we're really grateful you're able to join us today. So, thank you, Randy. Our next gentleman is also a Marine. He's dressed up in a Vietnam, come on out here, Don. Make yourself known here. Don is a Marine serving in the early 1960s, and he's actually dressed up in a Marine Corps camouflage uniform from the Vietnam War era.
Late Vietnam.
Late Vietnam, okay. Don has something in common with one of the Marines painted up on painting up there, and he was a flamethrower operator like our friend Charles Lindbergh. So Don served his country honorably. He's retired, but enjoys doing living history as well. So thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Katie, could I have you step out here, please? Right. Obviously, women play an important role in the service today, and they played an important role. Starting in World War I, we had women Marines. World War II, and Katie's actually dressed as a woman Marine from the Vietnam War era. Very comfortable uniform and work uniform. Katie, they're all very dedicated historians up here. They know a lot about Marine Corps history. So after the event, I would suggest going up and speaking with them. They love to talk about the history of the Marine Corps, and they'd be happy to answer any questions. But comfortable today, Katie?
Much more so than the wolves.
All righty, so thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. And last but not certainly least is my friend Tony, who's a former serving Marine. Want to come out here and show me your uniform, Tony? Tony is a veteran of the conflict in Afghanistan. He was a cannon cocker. Is that what you Marines call it?
No, I was an ammunition technician.
Ammunition technician.
I was with
over.
the artillery.
Okay, but he served over in Afghanistan, and he's wearing his dress blues, his modern Marine dress blues today, and they still fit pretty good, don't they, Tony?
It's been almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Still pretty good.
Yeah, so anyways, Tony's a dedicated historian as well, and he works for the state of Minnesota helping veterans receive benefits. You work for the state, is it?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and but anyways, I really appreciate these guys coming out here today. They do a lot of events around the state to commemorate military history, specifically Marine Corps history, to keep the traditions alive and to share the history of the Marine Corps with people at events like this. So, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now I'll start on my right. John Justin, he's in the Marine Corps painting, correct?
I'm the corpsman.
The corpsman. Bob Mueller, classmate of mine, who is, how many people we decided you're up there in the Army? 3.5, right? 3.5. 3.5. And it's because of him that I was able to meet Ray Stump, who is up here. And is Barb here today? Oh, okay. And then over here we have Steve Shelley. Steve is two of the figures right there, and also on the ground up there. My wife Catherine is here. She is the Civil War spy in purple.
And the truck driver.
Oh, and the truck driver. I forgot the other truck driver. And then we have Lauren Brady, who is up in the Coast Guard painting, Petty Officer First Class. How many years now?
12.
12, okay. My nephew, Jim Kleinschmidt, former Navy. He was on the Trident submarine, Ohio. And this is my grandniece, Kylie. You see her right up there. Anybody else I'm missing that I don't see? Huh? Quentin, is Quentin here somewhere? Well, apparently not. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And then, of course, Major Zabinski and Colonel Roy Edwards. So, I thank the Honor Guard and reenactors for joining us today as well, and to each and every veteran here, thank you. So here we are, 4 of 5. What a tribute to our women and men of the military. These paintings reflect their stories not only for this generation, but for generations and their legacies to follow. And with the 4th on the wall, a gap is closing. And I hope you can see the flow that begins that is designed through the 5 paintings. Needless to say, it has been a challenge. If you look at the lines up top, you can kind of see how they sort of are moving from one to another. As with any dedication, it is time of both reflection and celebration. I can assure you that an 8 by 10-foot oil painting does not just get done overnight, despite what rumors swirl to the contrary. It takes the dedicated effort of so many, including the fundraising committee, cemetery staff, models, friends, family, and so many people have donated to make these paintings come to life, and the words cannot convey my thanks. The cemetery staff hung in there again, no pun intended, to get this on the wall. It is not as easy as banging a nail and hoping for the best. Nope, a skyjack, a really careful team out here makes hoisting a big, heavy painting a whole lot easier. And the heavy part of the painting is not really my doing. Actually, the canvas itself weighs around 50 pounds, but when a custom cherry frame is added, it's about 200 pounds. So there's quite a crew of us getting it up. And there's a little catwalk up behind, so there are two guys that are up behind the painting with ropes as we're hoisting her up. We've heard comments from Major Zabinski, and I cannot thank her enough for coming here today, modeling for the painting and for the tour of the museum at Quantico. As I see everyone looking up and around at the painting, I share with you now the storyline behind it, hoping that you will be inspired to further investigate not only the Marine Corps, but the other branches of all of history. So everything starts with a beginning, and in the project with the Army, Marine Corps, and Navy, I start right back at 1775, and for the Marines, it was that famous November 10, 1775 at Tun Tavern in Philadelphia. And I use a lot of symbolism, so on the sign you can see several things written up there. And it's impossible to have everything known to man in any of these paintings. And so for me, the entire project, the most difficult aspect was the editing. You know, what do you put in versus what do you not put in? Knowing that many of us are going to look to history that is most recent to us, thinking back maybe World War II and to the present, but it's necessary to talk about how we got to this century. So after Tongue Tavern, we take a little trip to Lake Erie, roughly 1813, 1814. You can see that with the tall clipper ships. And this is my little sneak in for Star Trek. That is the very first Enterprise up there. Let it be known. People ask, are there any secret meanings or hidden things in the, so there you have one. Then we have Chapultepec, the Halls of Montezuma, and it was a group of 28 Marines that led a successful charge to take over that castle without any injury whatsoever. We have Harper's Ferry, which is actually a little pre-Civil War, and what's really noted about that, it was then a Lieutenant Colonel Robert E. Lee who led a group of Marines to take over that army that John Brown was trying to get the weapons out of. And throughout the Civil War, they actually began some of their experimenting with different types of amphibious landings with little steamboats and things like that, and that continued on to where we are today. Then we moved to Belleau Wood, which is actually, we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of that particular battle in World War I. And for those of you who remember, President Macron from France brought a large sapling, which is to be planted in the White House garden to commemorate that 100th anniversary. I would also like to note that in the 143-year history that had preceded from the Revolutionary War to that period, in that small conflict, not necessarily small conflict, but the Marines lost more people that day than they had in their entire 143-year history leading up to that point. It's also where they got the nickname Devil Dog, because as they were going in, the French and the Army were retreating, and the Marines said, we just came here to fight. At least that's how I read the story. Then we have World War II, and there's quite a few things going on there with some different scenes. You can see the flamethrower and the explosion, and a lot of these things I put in for just nice vignettes to help me within the composition to move from one spot to another, because these vistas do not exist in reality, so I have to find connecting points to do that. I'd like to make a particular comment on the flag raising of Iwo Jima. Some of you may not be aware of the fact that there's actual sand from Iwo Jima on top of Mount Suribachi. We had a gentleman from Minnesota, Charles W. Lindbergh, no H at the end of the name, who was at the raising of the flag February 23rd, 1945 at 10:30 a.m. He went back for the 50th anniversary, and he picked up some sand and brought it back. He then in turn turned some of it over to Doug Thompson, who gave me some sand and asked if I wanted to put some in the painting. So before I go on, I'd just like to read something here. I have two little things. Volcanic soil from Iwo Jima embedded in oil paint from the Marine Corps painting. This was brought back from Iwo Jima by Charles W. Lindbergh in 1995, flag raiser February 23rd, 1945, 10:30 a.m. And I'd like to give each of you a piece of Iwo Jima. Colonel, I don't know, were you ever on the island? Did you ever visit Iwo Jima, the island itself? Because I know you have. Yeah, no.
No, I had to overflog, so I didn't get to land there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, so from there we then moved to Korea and the Chosin Reservoir, which was actually one of the probably hardest fought battles in a long, well, as far as weather conditions since the Revolutionary War. Some of the temperatures were 30, 35 below zero, so the Marines had a terrible time coming out of that. Then we have the Vietnam era, and I really put a lot of Vietnam in this because it's my generation, and many, many of my friends are veterans of Vietnam, and they had to go through a lot when they came back to the United States. And so another part of that is if you look at the corpsman on the beach, there's the healing process, because the corpsman himself is in a World War II uniform, and the veteran laying on the sand who is in need of assistance is in a Vietnam era uniform. So there's a lot of history behind that. And what gave me the thought to do that was about 5.5 years ago when Colonel St. Sauver had a Welcome Home Vietnam Day at Camp Ripley, and that was an incredibly moving day for many, many people, myself included. Then as we move further on down, the landing scene also is from Da Nang, and the quintessential Marine is Chesty Puller, so you see those ribbons on the bottom. He was the second most decorated veteran from World War II. He had 5 Navy Crosses, Army Distinguished Cross, Silver Star, what else do we have there? Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, and then the Navy Flight, and then the Purple Heart, and in death he was given the brevet promotion to Major General. And then of course we have our models here. Major Zabinski is representing the future, the current time of the Marines, being an aviator. We have Colonel Roy Edwards, who has spent his time there, and that is the mess dress uniform, by the way. It's an incredibly beautiful uniform. You need to check it out. Quentin Sam was retired about maybe 3-4 years ago, so the dress blues are depicted. And then we have Corey Engen, who works out here, and Corey is sort of sitting alone back there, reflecting on, you know, what it's like, because once you've been in combat, it never leaves you. So this whole painting is something that is always in his mind, and there's a really wonderful testimonial that Corey gave when he was modeling for me, and he just said, you know, this project depicts the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you take it with you no matter where you're at. And so that's why I have Corey in there. Then we have a tribute to the MIA, and then the 45 in the front is all about the sad story of the 23, 24 suicides a day that go on. And that shell is in the sand to say, plant the thought, you know, get rid of the thought, you know, don't plant yourself, plant the thought. So that's something that we have to deal with. But again, there's many lengthy stories you can look at when it comes to this painting, and I just want you to maybe take some time out to do a little research on the Marines. So now I guess I have to go back on script here. I hope that I have given the Marines a story and an image that is worthy of their service, and I hope that it is true of all branches of service. The paintings you see all around today are intended to bring the viewer inside, to visually focus on the enduring impact of our nation's servicemen, servicewomen and men, not only during their time of service, but long after. Whatever your branch of the military, these paintings highlight your contributions, achievements, and sacrifices. They are your stories. And I thank you for letting me, in this way, tell them. They will remain here forever to honor you and your families for your service to our country. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Charles. It's truly been a pleasure being able to get to know you and Catherine throughout this process. And also, as a state veteran cemetery, our mission is to serve veterans and their families. But to me, that's more than just physically. That's long-term, making sure that their stories are told for future generations. And I really feel that these are going to be the big piece of the pie for us to be able to do that. I want to thank everyone for being here today to honor the United States Marine Corps. Again, I apologize about the space and the heat, but it's probably nothing compared to what a lot of our Marines have been through in their lives. And also, I'd like to invite everyone to the American Legion in Little Falls here. There will be a reception immediately following the service today. So again, thank you for everyone to coming out. Thank you to our guest speakers, and thank you for all of our special guests for attending.